Good morning, everyone. I'm that dude over there, and Genealogy: The Holy War is the fourth game of the Fire Emblem franchise that has been referenced constantly for its future games. Awakening and Fates borrow their second generation idea, and Three Houses borrows its Holy Blood system. Heck, Edelgard's main idea as a unit is similar to Arvis in Generation 1. That is why today we will be visiting Juggerel to see how easily you can beat this game with 5 units. If you like what you see, please like and subscribe as it helps idiots like me who suck at promoting videos. So similar to Tellius, I have to divide my army into 2 separate armies, cause otherwise this would become increasingly difficult. Sigurd and Seliph are mandatory units, and depending on your units for Generation 2, Finn might be a mandatory unit as well. For events that I'll go more into detail later, I predict that using only 5 will end with the run ending at either Chapter 10 or Endgame. So if you want a straight answer, no, it's possibly impossible. But if you want to see a fun answer, then listen on. For my army in Generation 1, our only required unit is Sigurd, meaning every other unit is fair game. Because of how huge genealogy maps are, horse units are pretty useful, so our first 2 picks are Quan and Finn. Quan is a decently strong unit that comes in the prologue with Finn, and Finn gets the Brave Lance that helps with disposing enemies on player phase. For my final 2 picks, I choose Lachesis and Aera. Compared to the other healers in Gen 1, Lachesis can actually fight back and comes with Miracle and Earthsword. She also promotes to a horse unit. Not only that, but thanks to her connection in the story, we can bypass a really hard fight in Chapter 3. Ira was more or less a free pick, and I also wanted Astra on a Gen 1 and 2 unit. Speaking of Gen 2, Gen 2 has only 1 required unit as well, in Seliph. Of the Gen 2 cast, the only unit I pick that's the same as Finn. He appears in both Gen 1 and Gen 2, and where he starts is a pretty hard area to get to with a cavalry or foot unit. After that, I choose Julia since she's pretty important to getting rid of the final boss. From there, we have 2 free spots. I want to bring Leif in since we just recently beat Thracia, but trying to keep him alive in Chapter 7 is pretty difficult with only Finn. So instead, we choose Ares. Ares comes with a holy weapon in Mistletoe, which gives a ton of critical hit, but he also starts as a cav unit. And finally, the last unit I choose is Larcy. She's Aera's daughter who will inherit her equipment, including a brave sword with Astra. Larcy is the ultimate dodge tank and can deal heavy damage to anyone who crosses her path. So with that out of the way, let's dive right into the run. Alright, one more disclaimer before we get in. We need to quickly discuss something about genealogy. Genealogy maps are broken into multiple parts. While it seems later on that we'll have few chapters, that's because these maps take an hour or 2 to complete. Not only that, but because of the average map size, horse units are the only good units to use in the game. But anyway, Sigurd starts the run by accidentally starting a conquest. He tries to save Aideen, and because of more story events to come, he'll end up conquering all of her homeland, and more. Sigurd is a pretty hefty unit who can pretty much defeat any unit on the field, but he's no god. If he gets outnumbered, he'll fall pretty hard. It's a good thing churches will heal us 10 gold per HP point. Oh yeah, and each character has their own trust fund, which can increase by fighting in the arena or visiting villages. And while villages aren't as weak as they'll later become, they are indestructible. After about 10 turns of being attacked, the village will be gone and whatever gold or items they could spare. Quan and Finn show up eventually, and Finn is pretty bad. He doesn't have increased growths from Holy Blood and needs a lot of support to get good. We have to wait till Chapter 2 to get Finn the Brave Lance for him to be an effective combat unit. Quan has to help Finn level up while also trying to get kills with his Javelin. So another fun fact about genealogy, kills with weapons do matter. After 50 kills, the weapon will begin getting a critical boost based on the number of foes killed. The max of this can be raised to 50% after 100 kills. So obviously the high crit Javelin will play a massive role moving forward. That is, if we can get it. The hardest part, in my opinion, of this run is maintaining our HP and visiting villages. The enemies deal a ton of chip damage and act as a huge roadblock for getting to villages in a timely manner. Because of this, there will likely be a ton of times where I won't be able to get a good reward that will help me. Case in point, failing to get the speed ring by Jungbi Castle. When it comes to units outside of our main 5, we have to sell their weapons off, and of course I have a feeling I'm gonna get hounded at saying shit like, oh, if they're selling weapons, they're doing something. But there's no other way to get these weapons into the convoy, outside my knowledge though. Besides, if I don't do this, they run the risk of attacking when they die, so kiss my ass. After we conquer Jungbi, Arvis delivers Seliph the greatest tool for Generation 2. The Silver Sword. Such a strong weapon being given out at the beginning of the game is ripe to train with and easy to get 100 kills with. We proceed to capture Castle Evans and clear the map. In Chapter 1, we get access to another unit for the run, but have to be stupidly careful to not kill her in the process. Of course, I'm talking about Ira. But before we can talk about her, we should get into the most fun version of the arena in Fire Emblem. See, how the arena works in FE4 is that you partake in it all you want, but if you lose, it leaves you with 1 HP. Also, there are only 7 rounds you can partake in, with the payout being greater each win. This is my favorite version of the arena since it allows you to use the arena without abusing it or fear of losing someone you wanted to use. But back to Eira. In order to recruit her, you need to capture Castle Genoa without killing her. This is easier said than done, because if you get too close, she'll attack your units. Alternatively, if she is too close to the base when you capture it, she will charge at Sigurd, guaranteeing her death. At the same time, we need to charge for Castle Marfa to stop Du from destroying the integrity of the run. Adine can't fight back whatsoever, but Du can not only fight back, but he also steals the foe's gold. That's 2 things in 1 turn. So we have to try and do all of this while keeping Finn mostly out of combat. This is an incredibly tough ask, but it is possible. I save Adine and Du first since Ira won't move if no one gets within her range. After that, I send Alec to help Sigurd by buying him time to capture Genoa. Did Alec sacrifice himself for that to happen? Sure. But it was a small price to pay for the sake of the self-defense tactics. After this, Sigurd manages to recruit Eira and she officially joins the team. Eira spends some time in the arena while Eldigan protects Castle Evans from the frontal assault. Don't worry though, Eldigan is a green unit so it's fine by us. Sigurd charges Castle Marfa alone and I get an idea. At the time I was still debating whether we use Leaf or Ares for Generation 2, and getting an early Brave Axe could improve Leaf when he promotes, I think, and technically Lex can get a Brave Axe without doing anything except waiting. So my plan was to have Lex travel the whole map in order to get the Brave Axe. However, I didn't realize that Lex needed an Iron Axe in order to do this. So I ended up wasting time having someone run around for no reason. Oh, I forgot. Sigurd gets married to someone he just met that day, and this one act will make his life a living hell later on. We can't use Deirdre's Silent Staff to help with the boss, so we have to finagle our way around the forest, killing Gemkey in the process, and charge at Castle Verdane to swiftly kill the boss. I thought this would be easier said than done, but we ended up landing a critical hit. Thus, we seize Verdane and clear the map. Chapter 2 opens up with Eldigan trying to bargain for peace. However, he doesn't realize the person he's talking to killed his own father, so he gets removed from the chapter, and it's up to Sigurd and co to save him and our final recruit, Lachesis, his sister. We end up recruiting a new character through the arena after defeating them, and Holland's weapons aren't that valuable, so we sell them off and continue to saving Lachesis. See, the biggest hurdle to jump over when recruiting Lachesis is arriving on time and protecting her from the squad of cavalry. They're trying to end the bloodline to kill Eldigan's resolve, probably, and so long as Lachesis falls into miracle range, we have time to rush over there with Sigurd and Quan. Eira is going to take a while to get across the map, so I have a different plan instead. To ensure that Larcy gets the best growths in the 2nd generation, we begin pairing Eira up with Lex. Lex provides Larcy with Paragon along with great skill, HP, and defense growth. She doesn't get great combat skills from Lex since the high HP growth doesn't mesh well with Vantage, but out of the remaining fathers, I simply believed that Lex's positives outweigh the negatives. And I can do this too since love growths by standing next to each other and waiting involve doing nothing in the process. But back on track, we save Lachesis and make our way to capture Castle Herrheim. However, I have to reset because I overestimate Quan's abilities and he dies. Well, reset might not be the best word, more like reload to save is better. We get Sigurd the return ring, which will come in handy later, and seize Castle Herrheim. Now we get to a tricky situation. During this time, bandits were attacking the village near Herrheim, and our squad cannot get to them thanks to Castle Anthony. However, With Herrhein's capture, that area opens up and 2 more units arrive as blue units, these being Lewin, the Magus Celeste, and Sylvia the Dancer. We have to basically guide Lewin and Sylvia away from the bandits and oncoming cavaliers from the north. Or, alternatively, we have to storm the enemies with Sigurd and Quan and reunite with them before an enemy attacks them. Thanks to Sigurd and Quan's high movement, they are able to get to Lewin before they begin fighting. We also managed to recruit Beowulf after investing a small fortune into him with no plans on returns. By the way, you may be wondering why I haven't brought up Finn yet. Well, that's because after we capture Castle Anthony, Cilician Pegasus Knights charge at our home castle with the attempts of recapturing it. They could have been quelled if their mage prince talked to the leader, recruiting them in the process. But because he can't talk due to not doing anything, we needed to have someone stay at the castle with the Pegasus until the Pegasi Knights arrived. However, with enough turns passing, I end up sending Finn away to deal with the main conflict, while Era defended the castle in the meantime. And on top of that, after Finn, Quan, and Sigurd deal with an attack that could kill Lachesis, Sigurd uses the return ring to help with the defense of our main castle. So that went nowhere. We get to our first encounter with status staves, and they're incredibly annoying, since you can't stall them out. And the fact that we have to deal with this more in the late game is going to be incredibly annoying. After seizing both Mackley and Castle Augusti, Eldigan chastises Sigurd for his reckless conquest, and Sigurd is dumbfounded that this is actually happening. Chapter 3 is a pretty tough chapter. It's first off the last chapter where we use Finn and Quan, so it's pretty important for us to get the 100 kills with their weapons. Getting out of the castle was a huge trial since it gets swarmed at all sides with various soldiers. Strong cavaliers to the left, bow knights to the north, and armor knights to the right. Era, Sigurd, and Finn can't counter the ranged units, and Quan doesn't quite have the bulk to take multiple hits. And don't even get me started with Lachesis. The most she can do is heal an ally and pray she doesn't get targeted. After a ton of fights, we finally managed to raid Castle Modeno. We lose a ton of villages in the process, but Sigurd gets the Thunderblade, so you know, you win some, you lose some. Before Sigurd seizes the castle, we rush everyone back to the home base because with Modeno captured, Eldigan decides to join the battle royale. See, up until now, we've been dealing with generic stock fodder, kinda like Marth's game, but less impactful. When Eldigan shows up, he comes with Mistletoe, which is a crusader's weapon. To put it in perspective, Castle Seville responded to Sigurd's conquest by deploying a nuclear weapon. No one is strong enough to endure its might, and to add on top of this, it has a high crit chance. You could try and tackle this problem head on and proceed to get everyone killed. Or you could send Lachesis in to convince Eldigan one last time for peace. Either way, Eldigan isn't getting out of this map alive. Because after Lachesis talks to Eldigan, receiving the Earth Sword in the process, Eldigan gets slain by Lord Shagger for treason. Oh, I forgot to mention this since I was so focused on Eldigan. We got Era the Brave Sword by marrying Lex. Lex didn't do anything in the process and Larcy needed a father to exist, so Lex won by default. Like before, we send out our units away from the Castle Silvale before seizing the castle. The reason for this is because once enemy phase kicks in, there are allied units that need to get saved. Unfortunately, because of our low movement, cavalry, and huge blockades of enemies, Bridget gets attacked and fights back. Now I have a problem. Even if I reset, there's no way I can stop this from happening. And as I'm writing this, I know what I have to do, but I don't know if I have the strength to do it. Actually, breaking the flow of the video for a moment, I realized that I've made a great mistake and lapse in my judgment. I initially decided to ignore something like this and proceed forward, mostly because it was something out of my control. But then I realized that this would be completely against what I stood for so long. And hopefully nobody finds any videos of me proving this point. It's not just here, but later on too. So as much as I want to use this later footage that I recorded, 10 plus video files that are all an hour long, I now have to go back and rebeat the game. So, if you don't see an FE video in the coming weeks, know that this is why. I'll be right back.
2,000 years later.
Okay, so on my third attempt, that's right, third attempt, I failed that last time, but wanted to set it up in a cool way, but with my morality coming back to creep in, I couldn't do that. Anyway, for our new attempt, our 5 units for Generation 1 are Sigurd, Lewin, Aranis, Bridget, and Tailtu. I guess I should explain why, as the footage of the previous chapters tried to catch up with me. When I did my initial run, I ran into a problem because of my units. Basically, we could kill a great number of units in Gen 2, however, in Chapter 10 we ran into an issue. In order to defeat Arvis, you need the Tyrfing to attack him, without taking a shit ton of damage in advance. But the mages that hunt down the NPC were always too fast for me to kill them. But even if I were to get Tyrfing, I would still be at a loss since I had no healer in my second party. And Arvis could just tank and wait for me to retreat to go back to max HP. So I came to the conclusion that if I were to get a second generation unit that could heal and be extremely traversable, I would be in the clear for the run. Now, if the 5 units didn't already spoil the answer, Fee was that unit. With the 100 kill Haviland or 100 kill magic weapon, with Lewin as her father, she could be a menace on the battlefield. So just switch Larcy for Fee and no problem, right? Well, yes and no. Because similar to Bridget being attacked with no way of properly saving her, Gen 2 has this happen again with Shannon and Patty, or Daisy in this case. So I had to revise the second generation units entirely. But before we touch that, because we will touch that later, let's discuss why we added Tailtew. Well, in order to get Finn the Bravelance to pass down to Generation 2, Quan had to talk to him. By this point, the team was looking like Lewin, Aranis, Bridget, Sigurd, and Finn. But if Finn isn't going to get the Bravelance, then I'd rather give up the spot for more support in later chapters. In this case, another mage that could promote into a healer. Not only that, but she can provide support to Bridget as we rush to get everyone to reconnect with her. Oh, but that's cutting right on the edge of coming back to the present. In Chapter 3, the game plays similarly up until the moment Eldigan reappears. Since we don't have Lachesis in our party, our only solution to beating Eldigan is through battle, and this is highly not recommended. Again, Eldigan is a threat for a reason, and that reason is Mistletoe. The only way we could damage Eldigan is through 2 range, without counterattack. His res would be his greatest weakness if it wasn't for Mistletoe, so instead we need to attack his also high defense stat. But again, a frontal assault is sewer slide, so instead we have Eldigan come to us. Sigurd and Lewin can take on the scouts, but once Eldigan gets in range, we have Lewin return to the castle while Sigurd sits on top to defend. Guarding grants 30 avoid and auto recovery. It's our only chance at surviving an attack. Eldigan charges, and while our first attack doesn't connect, the second lands a critical hit with our 100 kill silver sword, bringing him to 11 HP. Sigurd can clearly kill Eldigan next turn, and after claiming Castle Sylvale, though like last time, we can properly return to the present. Bridget fights back and we don't have to reset, and come player phase, Father Claude, this one, not that one, also spawns in with his bodyguard Tailtew. Tailtew is pretty squishy, but in this case, so long as she doesn't go too overboard in fighting, it comes to her advantage. Tailtew comes with Wrath, so bringing her down to low HP greatly increases her critical hit. However, Tailtew is surrounded by pirates, and now I've just made the situation into a double kill scenario. I need to hurry and save both of these guys, otherwise we'll be trapped in a pretty crappy situation. We'd send Lewin, but he needs to kill all the soldiers crossing the bridge to protect our home castle. And the only way we could do that is through guarding. Sigurd is too far away to join the fight, so it's up to Aranis to save these two, the best she can. And let me tell you, Pegasus Knights are not meant to tank waves of soldiers, especially when one of them has a bow. I was so grateful for saving in this game, and yes, that is what I'm calling it since you can save in the game mid-map, otherwise Bridget and Tailtew would have never survived. Lewin promotes into a sage, giving us our first healer for Generation 1, and we seize the map. In Chapter 4, Quan, Ethelyn, and Finn leave the group as they get RSVP'd for a barbecue in Valhalla. We use the arena to train again before the map starts, which by the way, we got flown out to the Kingdom of Celeste to escape instant death. I always didn't like this chapter whenever I played this part of the game. They introduce the sleep staff, long-range tones start to come in, and on top of that, how slow the chapter is puts me to sleep. When it comes to the second half of the chapter, Lewin becomes a tactical nuke as he obtains Forseti, one of the more broken holy weapons in the game, and we take on the boss. Honestly, I don't like the chapter too much, so I'll jump into the next for better entertainment sakes. Chapter 5 is the last chapter for Gen 1 units, and there is a lot that goes on in this chapter. Let's start with the very basics. Sigurd's dad manages to escape captivity with the broken Tyrfing. It costs 50,000 to repair, which we have, and we have 2 turns to get to him before he dies. While this is going on, this is the last chapter to get everyone killed off, and I want them dead by my choices. So we send Holland, Du, Azel, Alec, Noish, Lex, and many more to the front lines. No one here survived. Sigurd can easily reach his dad with the leg ring and kill everything with the 100-kill javelin. Meanwhile, Aranis protects the hard-to-reach villages with Brigid, Lewin, and Tiltu, so Sigurd can reclaim his trust fund. The boss for the first part of the map is Lex's dad, who wields the Holy Axe Hell's Wrath. He's not too keen about us killing off his son, and after a short introduction to Lewin, he dies from pure embarrassment. We seize Castle Lubeck, and Quan finally arrives with his wife and daughter to aid everyone. However, Thracia gets jealous of Quan's party and decides to kill them, steal their daughter, and their holy weapon. That'll teach him to invite more people to a party. Aranis gets rid of all the problematic sleep clerics, and we get revenge on Thracian troops for setting up Leif's backstory. We travel across the desert and seize Castle Fenora, and the last hurdle of victory has come. We must seize Castle Veltomer from Commander Veltor. And here's a fun fact. If you kill him before routing the enemy, all the soldiers will just magically vanish. My personal headcanon is that when Veltor fell, the gates of the Shadow Realm had opened up to swallow his army whole. But you know, that's just a theory. Anyway, we don't seize and instead talk to the hostess to get into Arvis's barbecue. But little did I realize that Sigurd's troop, including Brigid, Lewin, Teal'c, Aranis, and oh yeah, I forgot to kill Arden, are on the menu. So Arvis taunts Sigurd and with his wife, who looks suspiciously like Selif's mom, and sends meteors to kill the party. And to ensure my escape, I will be recreating the thumbnail and getting the fuck out of here.
A few moments later.
After another long time skip, we return to Jugdrol with our second generation units, and in this run, our units are simple. We use Selif because main lord, duh, and the second unit we use is Julia. Julia is vital for this generation, unlike her mom, who is completely useless. Next is Fee, daughter of Lewin, who is also incredibly vital for the recruitment of our next character, that being Leif, because Thracia 7076 is canon, and Leif survived in that game. And finally, our last unit is Shannon. I would have done Ares, but again, in his chapter, sword fighters charge Shannon and Daisy at the beginning of the chapter, and we move way too slow to get them in time. But back to the chapter in question. Chapter 6 relies on conquering the first castle solo with Selif. This isn't that hard because Selif inherited a shit ton of good stuff from Sigurd, including the 100-kill silver sword, his armor slayer, and 3 different rings to maximize efficiency. The biggest problem Selif faces is damage control. He's soloing a bunch of enemies which will drain our weapon uses, and we need that gold. Not only to repair our weapons, but to pay the church to keep us alive. And once we seize Castle Ganshire, our job doesn't get any easier. We get Julia, our second protagonist, but because of the charging axe cavaliers, Julia has to wait for Selif to clear them all. Oh, and if you're wondering why I don't use Julia for the first chapter, it's because we don't have any weapons or staves on her. She is a literal liability at this moment. However, we also get Fee to aid us in this part of the map. She's carrying all the great equipment her mom had, and can fly. However, her role is to fly about and kill the brigands threatening the villages. We need all the gold we can get, and with Fee's movement, we have a chance to get more gold than without her. After killing Johan and Yohava, we seize Castle Isaac. We'll come back to Castle Safara later, but if we talk to Julia after seizing Isaac, we get Julia the Nosferatu tome, which is 10 times better than Aura. Fight me. The final boss for this map is Danon on Castle Revo. For some reason, the boss has a thief sword, which is incredibly useful for getting gold. However, in my work to train Julia, she's the one who gets the sword after killing him. Well, at least the sword is a cheap sell and a cheap buy. Chapter 7 is absolutely brutal. Leif and Shannon are at 2 different points on the map. Leif on the lower right and Shannon to the top left. Shannon can defend himself after talking to Daisy for Balmung, but Leif is absolutely useless despite surviving the events of Thracia 7076. My headcanon is that when the light appears at the end of Thracia, it sucked all of the stats and Crusader scrolls from Leif's army. Also, it killed all the people that did not show up in Genealogy. At least it removed the stamina system, so that's cool. Luckily, Fee can skydrop from our home castle to aid Leif while we rush down to Castle Leonester. However, before we can reunite with Leif, there's 2 castles we need to seize first. The first is the castle at Yeld Shrine. This chapter has a ton of dark mages, which is good for Julia, but bad for Shannon. We actually have to reset the map because the boss gets its hands on the Fenrir tome and snipes Shannon as he attempts to join the group. Second or third time around, Shannon escapes and it's up to Seliph to sprint around the desert to take out the boss. After seizing the Yed Shrine, you'd think the map would get easier, but of course it wouldn't. It takes a long while to trek down Castle Melgen, but the bigger problem is all the siege weapons surrounding the castle. Ishtar, not to be confused with Ishtar, has a bolting tome to snipe our allies with their shitty resistance. But Julia can't take on Ishtar yet because there are ballistas in the way that happen to be in range of Ishtar's bolting. So it's up to Seliph to kill as many ballista while avoiding Ishtar's lightning strikes like the plague. And eventually we managed to beat the boss with Seliph's 100 kill silver sword. Take a shot every time I say 100 kill silver sword, you'll be drunk before the end of the video. With Castle Melgen seized, the next part of the map unlocks with our big make it or break it moment. Ares joins the team and is being pursued by Cavaliers. This would be a problem if Shannon didn't come in this chapter and could dodge tank all the Cavaliers thanks to Balmung. The bigger problem comes with defending Leonester from Linda and her troops of mages. These guys are trouble and Fee needs to work hard to not die in the process of protecting our former protagonist. And it doesn't help that Fee has a ton of armor foes as well. This moment in the chapter was incredibly stressful since Leaf has little wiggle room to survive and a wrong attack will kill both of them. Thankfully we do manage to kill all the mages thanks to some heavy save scumming, and we charge Castle Ulster to end the map. Big problem though, Bloom, our final boss, has a holy weapon, and we need to have Julia work with Shannon for a kill as Leaf tries to get as many levels as he can from the arena. This is because chapter 8, Leaf starts far away from the team as he tries to protect Leonester. We managed to beef up Seliph and Fee for this chapter thanks to a timely promotion, but this is just the bare minimum that we can do as we charge after Leaf, who again is defending Leonester solo. We rush Seliph to aid his cousin while Fee takes care of the brigands raiding the villages. Shannon and Julia, with their poor movement, are in charge of taking care of the forces that are trying to attack our main castle. While I want to say either Fee or Shannon will have the more difficult job, I personally believe that Seliph has the roughest of the three. Not only does he have to carry most of the work dealing with Leonester defenses, but he also has to do it without healing. Oh, and that's not including that he also has to deal with the mage trio from last chapter. That is, if I didn't have Fee step up with her superior resistance stat. Fee actually has a second job here as well. Ishtar, not to be confused with the now dead Ishtar, has come to wreak havoc among our group, and the only way to stop her from attacking Seliph and Leaf is by stalling her with Fee. By getting in and out of her range via untraversable terrain, Fee can stall out just long enough until Julius arrives to kick Ishtar, not to be confused with Ishtar, out of the map. Julia and Shannon are finally able to reconvene with Seliph and Leaf, and we proceed to the first castle of the map, Knout. Knout is being protected by several bolting mages, but we've gained new brazen confidence after several turns of doing nothing. It also helps that we finally promote Julia, giving her a ton more stats to capitalize on with Nosferatu. Dang, we've gotten a ton of kills with this thing. I hope it doesn't come to bite us in the ass in the future chapters, but what am I saying? Julia would never leave the party for any reason whatsoever. Anyway, we kill Bloom again, a lot easier this time since we could kill him with Seliph's silver sword. With Castle Knout seized, we have to aid Sed from the invaders of Thracia. One of their commanders, Altina, is pretty scary with Gaybold, but she won't move since her character arc can't be completed until the next chapter. There are also little kids escaping to Castle Knout, which we can save with Leaf. Not for the goodness of saving these little brats, but because Leaf is comically underleveled and can gain 6 free levels from saving them. Fee has to race to the other side of the mountain to save a pretty impressive bracelet that allows the user to steal gold. We also obtain a Brave Sword, which is super hype for Leaf since it's a low rank sword that Leaf can wield for some decent damage. Now we could recruit Sed this chapter, or we could ignore him and leave Forseti lost to the sands of time. The boss is a pushover and Altina runs to cry into her not dad's arms. You can actually tell it's not her dad since the last person to use Gaybold died in a desert. So chapter 9 is a really fun, annoying chapter. We can stop a dangerous Thracian general Altina from murking us with the Gaybold if we talk to her with Leaf. However, this can only be done if Leaf knows about her sister's existence. And because I sacrificed Finn in chapter 7, Finn can't tell Leif about Altena, meaning I wasted an entire recording because I kept trying to recruit Altina instead of killing her off. But with that knowledge I know now, Julia kills the Thracian Draco Knights with their Nosferatu tome. Hannibal is also recruitable this chapter, but it takes so much effort to do that. So much effort that I don't care. Oh, and Fee saves a bunch of villages to get Seleth a barrier ring. Once Capithogia? This can't be the real name. We move on to Castle Luthetia and their hordes of knights. If I'm fucking this up, please let me know in the comments because I'm referring to the wiki and guides for these names, and I feel bad for either butchering this or just getting it wrong. Anyway, after seizing the next castle and raiding all of the villages, we move on to Castle Grucia, and the second worst castle on the map. Why I hate it is the same reason why I hate Ishtar, not to be confused with the alive Ishtar's castle in chapter 7, ballista and magic siege weapons. Thankfully by this point we promoted Leif, where he goes from being the virgin prince to the Giga Chad Master Knight, with access to all weapon types and magic, save dark magic. So after a quick kill with Seleth to kill the castle guard, we can have Leif build some levels on the remaining ballista. With Grucia captured, we move on to actual worst castle on the map for Castle Thracia. The first act starts fine with General Arion sending 3 waves of Draco Knights for our various bases. We left Shannon to deal with the ones at our home base because Balmung gives Shannon the skill to avoid all their attacks. Meanwhile, Fee proves her worth by slaying all the Draco Knights with her Thunder Sword to give her another high crit weapon with range. The only difference being this one casts El Thunder at range. We also do a special conversation between Julia and Seleth to bump up his resistance, and believe me, we're going to need it for the next chapter. But once these Draco Knights are taken care of, Fee returns to the main team to help with Act 2. Once Act 2 begins, it's incredibly annoying. Arion charges at the group with Gungnir and the obtainable Miracle Ring. Miracle increases your evasion when you're at low HP, but Gungnir gives Arion a shit ton of speed, defense, and strength. Oh, and did I mention that his fleet of Draco Knights have sleep swords? This poses a pretty difficult problem for us, as the only holy weapon user I could use is halfway across the map and doesn't have the ability to survive against Gungnir. None of my characters could afford to be hit by this thing, and I forgot to save before engaging his fleet. So did I reset my progress of this map for a better plan? Well, no. See, what I forgot was Seleth had Charm. Charm increases the accuracy of allies within his range, allowing our units to hit through Arion's Miracle after a barrage of attacks from the Thunder Sword, Nosferatu, and Leif's Brave Bow. From there, all it took was time to kill the rest of the Thracian Knights before we could seize and move on to the penultimate map. Starting chapter 10, the plot steals away Julia from the party for something cool it wants to do later. What I think the real reason is that this map is full of dark mages, and Kaga didn't want you to abuse Julia's high resistance to defeat them. In any case, this chapter always had the hardest turn 1 for me. There are a ton of dark mages, as I said before, but our big nemesis, the Sleep Staff, rejoins the party along with their friend, the Hell Tome. Hell reduces players to 1 HP, but can never land a finishing blow. They wouldn't be that bad if we didn't also have to deal with Fenrir tomes or other attacking spells in the process. We send Fee away from the party to save villages from pirates while Leif, Seleth, and Shannon deal with the dark mages. It's a long and tedious process, but after doing this, we have to deal with an army of horseback before reaching Castle Kronos. Castle Kronos is being guarded by Hilda, a tough sage who, if you had Teeny, is the person who tortured her mother until her inevitable death. Fee is able to save 1 village before retreating back to join our party of 3. Seleth takes care of Hilda with Balmung, but before we can access part 2 of the map, we also need to capture Castle Rhodos. This castle is annoying because in order to access it, we need to clear 3 Hell Mages without getting hit, or alternatively kill 1 Hell Mage and kill the boss and seize. By seizing the castle, we unlock the second part of the map, and this part isn't as hard as the first part. The only real annoyance is staying out of Julius and Ishtar's range, but this is also a problem. In order to seize the castle, we need to bypass either Julius or Ishtar, but both of them are too strong to tackle. Ishtar gives us no room to fight back, while Julius is the final boss of Genealogy, so he can't die here. We could try and do some masterclass 5 brain maneuver plays to try and kill one of them, or I could just send a unit that I don't care about into the gallows. One sacrifice should send them away until we get to the endgame. So who do we? It's Ares. Ares was going to be tough to kill because he has Mistletoe, which is a holy weapon. However, if we have Ares equip the Iron Lance that he came with in his Join chapter, Julius should have enough accuracy to kill him easily. Like father, like son, both lost to the sands of time due to the workings of a cult. With Ares dead, we charge towards Castle Miltos to move on to the last part of the chapter. But before we do, we have Fee split up from the group in order to aid us, because once the last part starts, 4 Dark Mages charge at the only person who could aid Seliph against the final boss of this chapter, Arvis. Arvis wields Volflame, that makes trying to kill him absolutely impossible, without Tearfang. And if the guy dies before Seliph can reach him, I will have an aneurysm. Thankfully, Fee manages to save the old priest, and with some persistence and hard work, Seliph manages to obtain the holy weapon. From there, we tackle Arvis and make sure to land the final blow with Seliph. We do this because a special event will trigger, giving Seliph the renewal band if Seliph kills his father's murderer. But with Arvis's defeat, we move on to the final map of the game. Beginning the final map, we start by killing off everyone except our protagonists. Fun fact, because I'll never be able to say it anywhere else in the script, Seliph falls in love with Mana for some reason. I wonder if it's a set thing where Seliph has to be married for the finale. In any case, once the fodder had been sacked off, we move on to the real stepping stone, or the real step 1, killing the Bow Knights that storm our castle. Shannon with the Balmung can hold his own pretty well, and because I gave him the Thief Ring and Bargain Ring, he can repair the massive damage that Balmung takes through defense. Once the cavalry is taken care of, we move on to the most annoying part of the map, trying to seize Castle Edda. The castle is surrounded by sleep and siege tome users, and the only one who can properly deal with it without risk of being put to sleep is Seliph. Leif and Shannon don't have the res, and Fee can't do it because there's a bow. I mean, Shannon could theoretically dodge tank with Balmung, but all it takes is one clean magic attack to wipe him off the face of the earth. It's just a huge headache to deal with, and the fact that only Seliph can do anything just makes this part super slow. But once Edda has been painstakingly captured after 20 or so turns, we get to the second part of the map, and coincidentally the easiest part. Castle Dazzle sends out what I believe to be a flank attack, attacking us at Castle Edda and Chalfie. Now, if we lose Chalfie, the game's over. But because this wasn't my first rodeo with this chapter, I had a plan. I knew that the side that was coming after Chalfie had a commander who came swinging back with Hell's Wrath, so in order to predict the play, I had Leif and Shannon defend Chalfie. Leif could easily take down the platoon of calves, while Shannon could easily evade all the commander's hits with Balmung. Seliph and Fee dealt with the cavaliers on the other side of the map, but these guys were pushovers compared to what Leif and Shannon had to go through. Once both sides had been properly disposed of, Seliph disposes of General Dagon of Castle Dozel, and begins Phase 3. Phase 3 we slow down a bit for 2 reasons. 1, Hilda comes back and has an army of magical generals at her disposal, meaning Fee has to use her Thundersword to pick off as many foes as she can before the main squad can intervene. The other reason is because reinforcements from Jungbi come to the lower left corner of the map to ambush the party. And unlike the second playthrough where I had no answer to this time I had Leif with his brave bow kill off most if not all the reinforcements. Once enough foes are taken care of, we kill Hilda off for real this time along with her army and prepare for Phase 4. We don't seize immediately after defeating Hilda, because Phase 4 is the last phase and the hardest phase of the map. There are 4 total things I have to look out for, with one of them being so important that failing to manage it will cost us a run. So let's break this down by least important to most important to get the bigger picture. 1, a platoon of Falcon Knights charge at us, and these guys are hard to kill. For one, they all have the leg ring, which means outrunning these guys is borderline impossible. But more importantly, these guys have earth swords. Earth swords in FE4 are basically Nosferatu tomes for sword units. It's 1-2 range with HP steal. These swords are balanced by having only 10 uses, but in the enemy's hands, they're infinite use and much more dangerous. All that alone would make them a threat, but the fact that these guys also have high criticals thanks to their triangle attack, or possibly having 100 kills on their earth weapons, it makes these 3 a challenge to face. And considering these guys are the lowest importance, it speaks volumes for the later foes. Next is Ishtar. Ishtar returns to the map to fight us, and we can't do much to stop her. Yes, Tearfang and Balmung make a huge difference when fighting against another holy weapon holder, But Mjolnir gives Ishtar enough skill and speed to rival the powers of Balmung and outspeed Tyrfing. The most we can hope for in this scenario is Fee fucking with her routing by entering and leaving her range. But Fee won't be there to help because 3, Arion shows back up at the bottom of the map to seize Castle Chalfie, which means we need Seliph and Shannon to protect Chalfie with Fee's help. But if all that wasn't bad enough, we encounter the worst part of this map. Julia returns but is brainwashed by Manfroy, the leader of the snake cult. Man, Kaga really had a thing for brainwashing, didn't he? First Tiki, then Delthea, now this? Anyway, Julia is the only one who can properly battle the final boss, thanks to her circlet, and Naga tome to counter Julius's Lopter tome. But in order for us to recruit Julia back to the team, we have to seize Castle Veltomer from Manfroy, and Julia doesn't wait around either. Like Ishtar, Julia hunts the party, and because she has Nosferatu and a high level thanks to our involvement, she will kill anyone who comes into contact with her. This is a huge problem for our 5 units that, on my second attempt, I thought would be impossible to overcome. But come attempt 3, this was something I was planning from the beginning. I would have originally had Ares on the team for additional holy weapon support. However, this left Arion and the Pegasus sisters as a huge threat. But you know who could easily snipe these Sky Knights? Leaf with the Brave Bow. Sure, it wasn't going to be easy, but Leaf could easily manage his own against Blag, Meng, and Mabel. This allowed Fee, Seliph, and Shannon the time to deal with Arion and his Draco Knights. Once they were done, Julia and Ishtar had finally made their way to Castle Frege, where Hilda had been before. But Fee was ready to stall them out as I had Seliph tackle Manfroy. I couldn't use Shannon or Leaf because of their low res and hell tomes. So instead, I had them wait at the ready to aid Fee once Manfroy was taken care of. And Julia was a lot easier to control as well because enemy prioritization also affects Julia, shuffling back and forth once a closer target, in this case Fee, got into range. This allowed me to recruit Julia with Seliph, and while Julia was getting Naga, Fee, Leaf, and Seliph were taking down Ishtar, which brings us to the final boss, Julius. Julius is being defended by 12 Dreadlords, which are just basically strong enemies. None of them are too scary as they carry silver weapons with the exclusion of the one holding the Nosferatu tome. And after taking care of them efficiently, we have 2 things left to do. Ensure our 5 units by killing off Oifi and taking on Julius. One of these is super easy to do, since Oifi has seen no combat and has pretty alpha resistance due to the non-use. But Julius is much more of a threat. Lopter, like other holy weapons, grants various buffs on him, but Julius is just a major threat. Tyrfing and Balmung aren't likely to do enough damage per turn, and one single blast from Lopter could be enough to put Seliph and Shannon into a nursing home. But again, this is where Julia comes in. Her circlet grants her renewal and miracle, making her harder to hit. And Naga gives great resistance and magic to go against her brother. And on enemy phase, Julia lands the final blow on her possessed brother and ends the Holy War once and for all. Genealogy of the Holy War is a pretty long and fun game, but playing it back to back 3 different times in a row has definitely worn it out for me. While I love the idea behind the story and all the fun little mechanics in the game, using 5 units really killed the enjoyment of the game, as maps sprawled to more of a crawl compared to other entries. Like most other entries, I would love to come back around and play it again, but because of how the video came out, it'll be a bit before I touch the genealogy. But that's my opinion, and if you don't know anything about the early Fire Emblem games, let me know in the comments below. And while you're down there, leave a like and subscribe, as it helps idiots like me who suck at promoting videos. But until next time, stay safe out there.